In True Confessions, Robert De Niro and Robert Duvall play brothers. De Niro is a relatively high-ranking priest in a church that has financially benefited from the donations of Jack Amsterdam, a powerful but corrupt builder. Duvall plays the older brother, a cop, who used to do dirty bagman work for Amsterdam, but is now investigating the murder of a young hooker that may or may not be connected with Amsterdam. True Confessions is quite an understated movie. It has understated performances from the two leads, who are both still great in their roles. The silent moments in the movie overpower the few instances of shouting matches. It's just that issues I have with the film stem from the fact that what it does, what it aims to do, other films could do, plus more. If a movie is a burger, and the meat is the story, or the action, or the bit that everyone remembers, the great films have a lot of extra toppings, a lot of onions and tomatoes, which could be great side characters, thematic undercurrents and metaphors, things like that. True Confessions has the onions and tomatoes, but it lacks the meat, and that really is my only problem with the movie. It's not an amazing movie, but it isn't a bad one either. I appreciated the fact that you don't really get films like these anymore, where so much goes unsaid. The main gist of the film, really, is whether Duvall's cop, a quick-tempered version of Detective Cole Phelps, with a lot of pent-up aggression, is willing to derail his brother's reputation and role in the church, which will inevitably happen if he brings his investigation to a conclusion and takes down the powerful Amsterdam. This is intercut with De Niro's Monsignor, who has a lot of worldly love and is seemingly taking a blind eye to the fact that he is directly working with criminals. Is it really a case of the greater good, doing what is necessary for the church? Has he become a hypocrite? These are the questions he begins to ask himself amid his uneasy few meetings with his brother. Uneasy meetings where you can see a genuine loving relationship could blossom, but there is a massive elephant in the room stopping the duo from doing so. It feels like, at times, that essential, fundamental scenes of dialogue, of flashbacks or conflict were cut from the movie and replaced with supplementary scenes of characters shuffling about or walking from car to door or going to bed. This sounds terrible, and it does go back to what I said about the film being an empty burger, but if you're able to consider the film, it really isn't that bad. In fact, it adds ambiguity. It challenges your mind, I think, to fill in the gaps, to think about the character dynamics and the relationships. A lot of the things are quite clear in the film through minor but intricate details, like characters' facial expressions and reactions to events. For example, despite it never being explicitly stated, you get the sense that Duvall may have been a devoted Catholic at some point, maybe even is deep down. But he has a resentment of the hypocrisy of the church, selling out by doing dealings with public figures like Amsterdam, who they know are dirty and corrupt. Even their own priests, who Duvall learns spend time in brothels. It's a case of seeing something that is supposed to represent purity, faith, and the straight path, being corrupted by the very people who are in charge of it, and Duvall sees through all the facade of humble public charades, something for which he is ironically outcast. There is an honour about this man, much more praiseworthy than the crowns bestowed upon the likes of his brother, and it's a killer performance by Duvall to bring all this to the forefront without exposition, even if he might be doing a De Niro impression at times. Saying that, I would have been interested to see the film with the roles reversed. I think De Niro could have done a lot more with the cop character. Even though Duvall was faultless, he would have certainly had a lot more to do, and Duvall himself would be exceptional at playing De Niro's role. Speaking of him, the younger ambitious brother's arc is almost as interesting, who seems blind to all these shady shenanigans, preaching the purity of the soul while he helps villains cover their sin. Perhaps we as the viewers sympathize with his naivety, but as the character deep down eventually admits to himself, he knew all along, but turned a blind eye, favouring the growing economic power of the church, of himself, in place of genuine Christian teachings. But admitting there is a problem isn't enough, and he has to face the tough decision of having his much-loved reputation disgraced if he is to rectify wrongs. Ironically, the film's villain Amsterdam is the one who calls out De Niro in his hypocrisy. In a rant that hits the bullseye so perfectly, I think it might have been better and in line with the understated nature of the film if they removed this otherwise captivating scene. In a sense, both brothers are seeking some sort of salvation, some sort of redemption. In terms of De Niro's character, it goes back to the Bible verse of, "For what profits a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul?" Reminds me a bit of an excellent film called A Man for All Seasons, which is almost an inverse where it's an entire hypocritical establishment trying to convince the last righteous man in the game to follow their ways. The events that have happened in the past are quite heartbreaking because it heavily damages the relationship between the two brothers, who are unable even to communicate in simple small talk without, as stated, the elephant in the room getting in the way. All of this is the actual fundamentals of the movie. The solving of the plot itself with the murder of the woman are only incidental, an afterthought. It is not at all a murder mystery, a neo-noir, not at all, but rather an examination of harsh truth, of values, self-reflection, and the damaged relationship between two brothers. It does what it sets out to do on the nose, but it feels light because it lacks a strong story despite the great characters. It feels weak. It feels like I'm going to forget I saw it in a couple of weeks. If only there was a bit more to it, a little bit more juice to the plot maybe. Because it has to be said, other films have tackled the thing True Confessions is doing, and they have done so in addition to having other elements. In fact, had the movie not secured the talents of two greats in their prime, I wonder if True Confessions would have been saved from its sins at all. The acting is strong, the script is weak, and the direction could have been tighter. What results is a film I think was good, mainly because of the two leads and the characters they carved out, but ultimately the film does feel forgettable. It lacks big scenes, money shots, and dramatic power, and it isn't as strong as other films of its ilk, but you could say it's also mature, patient, and intelligent. It's hard to pin down a rating for it, but I'll settle at a 7.